Wholeness and balance, everyone. Welcome to another edition of We Meditate. I am your host, Ahmad Brown, aka Son of Pharaoh, and today I got a great show dealing with some modern social trends that we may use that actually fuel our duality perception. Perception. We're talking about duality perception. I got this inspiration just analyzing, a common thing that we do nowadays via the internet with our internet posts. Um, if there's any type of, crazy story that's going on, that there's always going to be three types of commentary that's going on. It's going to be people who just make general commentary, dropping knowledge or just, saying, that's an interesting, thing that's happening, or if it's a piece of news, something, with the world or something, like Mike Brown oriented, where there's some type of tragedy, people are either just, making their common response, adding their 2 cents, um, or that there's people who are discrediting, the whole situation. They're calling some type of information a falsehood, or discrediting it because it doesn't align with some form of knowledge that they are attached to. Or they basically just bring some form of just disbelief. To try to deconstruct whatever something may be posted, via the internet. Then the third type is the troll. The troll is the type of person, that's just saying any and everything inflammatory, to garner a response. And these things, just so out of the box, it's hard to tell if they're one just, being intentionally, inflammatory, or if they actually do share a particular mindset that is just so egregiously out of balance that the only response is to like respond in anger, at least for the most part is to respond in anger. And so, um, in recent posts, just really just analyzing some things, I realize I do a lot of internet post reading. I read a lot of sports, so there'll be a, an article about LeBron James or something. And it's almost like the first handful of comments are just the most egregiously deviant ones. People just saying some of the most outlandish things that are just inciting, replies, people jumping on some form of duality, either choosing, staunch support or staunch denial, for whatever that person said. And on a more serious note, when we have, these racial issues that are going on in America, with police brutality, things of that nature, we'll have someone just say something completely idiotic, or something completely devoid of compassion, things of that nature. And it inflames a dualistic response. Either people show their blind support, or their blind denial for these sorts of things. And so it's hard to find a middle of the road, response, or a middle of the road, drop of knowledge that could help bring clarity to these type of situations. It just seems like when something in the world happens that garners a lot of attention, many of us, show our proverbial asses, via the internet, and really show what form of duality we are actually operating in. And so it's easy. I mean, I'm bringing up random examples, but it's really just go and look up something in and of yourself. Like just go to CNN and go to the justice section and click on the first story and read down in the comment section. You'll see that things are just like completely crazy in those particular sections where people are showing just such crazy ideas and such crazy views of the world. Now, I say this because there's one thing that's usually common with a lot of these commentaries is the people who say the most inflammatory things. I like to call them, internet bullies. They take on this internet bully persona where they use, the buffer of the internet to say whatever they're really thinking. They use the buffer of the internet to just come out of the side of their neck. They use the buffer of the internet by creating, these false, identities or these false profiles, that don't even link to necessarily a real person. And that gives them the freedom to finally say what's really on their chest, and show what form of dualism that they're actually operating out of. And they do this again from an illusionary perception because they're actually not owning their full identity and saying whatever it is that they need to be saying with full accountability, meaning who they are, what their name is. You can click on their link and to direct you, some form of way to like contact that particular person. There's always, generally speaking, some type of buffer that takes place. Another good example is like if you go on Facebook, there's a lot of private groups, a lot of secret groups and things of that nature. And a lot of these secret and private groups are really just like swelling grounds for racism. I'm a part of a handful of groups, where they talk about occult knowledge and, ancient African, histories, things of that nature. And yeah, there's a lot of wealth of knowledge going on, but it also goes at the expense of people showing just their blatant, superiority complexes based on, some type of racial makeup. And so it severely dilutes, the transmission of energy that could be sent out and reach a whole lot more of people that need it, because knowledge is actually knowledge that needs to be shared regardless of whatever nationality you come from. But because of our dualistic perceptions, we take a very strong grip on the little bit of ownership that we've got on something, and we ride that line and divide accordingly. And so this divisive energy is still like fueled by this dualistic perception, where we have these false buffers, where we believe this false buffer of secrecy, this false buffer of having a fake identity, a fake internet personality, will somehow free us or finally give us the freedom to say what we really, really feel. And so that's what I want to talk about, this false buffer that fuels this dualistic perception, which is also like a false reality in and of itself. So let's break it down into the spirit science for a section. This whole duality perception. With a duality, we're here in a dualistic plane where we actually see things with senses. Things are separated. We have the illusion of separation. Like you're watching me in this video, like I'm not necessarily in your room. The only reason why I'm there is because of like the technology. So there's the illusion of separation that takes place. Where we believe that we're two separate entities, like I am not me and I am not you. That's a dualistic perception. That's a falsehood. We're actually all the same energy, just slowed down and refracting, different light rays from the source. But so the dualistic source, or this dualistic perception that we have, is about the base energies that are fueling this thing, black and white. And literally speaking, the black energy, negative, and the white energy, light, that is positive, again, is just talking about a purely scientific aspect of how energy moves, and neither one is necessarily good or bad. They are just ones extending themselves in two totally different directions on a circular sphere. So if one is shooting out left and right, but it's on a plane of an orb, they eventually come around and crash. So as they continue to come around and crash, those collisions create the spark, and the spark is actually the fire, and then the fire actually explodes, which is the Big Bang. And as the explosion cools and things trickle down, it creates the refractions of light that fuel the slowed down vibrations, or fuel the existences. And that's essentially how we got here, or how all things are manifested into a 3D plane. They start off with some type of idea from the divine source, and eventually find themselves trickling down into a realm of experience, where that thought or that intelligence or that pure energy can actually get into motion in the lowest realm. And it's, again, everything in this is an orb. In the lowest realm, it cycles all the way down to the bottom of the orb, and then eventually will cycle back up to the source. And so here in the earth, we are in a lower realm where we're just cycling the energy to eventually go back to the source for all of us who can, get back to it. But the only way you get back to it is, again, breaking free of this duality perception that can keep us all stuck. And so the science, again, about this duality perception is what fuels this existence, but can also trap us and keep us like there if we believe that this illusion is real. And so this illusion, again, keeps playing itself out in the way that we carry ourselves. And this goes back to the internet message boards. If we are solely fueled in some form of dualistic perception, where we believe our stake and claim of life, whether it be nationality, whether it be job, whether it be class, whether it be we've created something, where that particular stake in the world puts us on a hierarchy ladder above someone, we have fully bought into the false perception of division. We fully bought into the false perception of the friction of life that we believe is the only form of life, or the most important form of life. And we've stepped away from the information that this is the swelling ground of life. This is the bottom rung of it. This is like the soil of the spirit, so to speak, where everything else will grow out of. And so when we see things like people finally using these buffers to finally let themselves be free to say whatever they're really in, they're actually operating in a lower frequency, or a lower way of looking at life, to where one, they're co-opting into a dualistic perception. But two, they don't even have the courage enough to let their dualistic perception be brought into the light of this realm and own it. Because when operating from a form of dualism is not necessarily good or bad, so to speak. Some of us are, again, on different phases of the cycle, but whatever phase of the cycle that you're in, that's what you need to own completely. You have to completely own whatever's operating in your mind, whatever form of consciousness, whatever level of consciousness you're operating with. You need to own that. So if you are, again, a racist or a bigot, something like that, you shouldn't be on Facebook with a false name, false identity, false perception, using that false identity to give you the freedom to finally say whatever you really feel. We've seen these things operate in the world, and they don't work. A good example, again, is like the KKK, for instance. They do still exist, but they were huge, earlier in America. But these men would put on these hoods, and they would say these hoods are, again, they cover themselves in light whiteness, things of that nature. Again, that was the whole paradigm of thought that they used. But they would use those things as their quote unquote symbols of purity. But the symbols of purity was actually just the buffers and covers for righteous indignation. Again, righteous indignation is nothing but another form of dualism, meaning you are angry because your view of the world, your refraction of light, is seen in a certain way, and someone else's view of the world does not fit your view. And so you are actually using the friction force to fuel anger, to fuel your actual perception. And so from this righteous indignation, though, they covered themselves in light. They covered themselves in their dualistic perception and use those covers as the freedom to go burn a stake, in someone else's yard, or use that as the freedom, to hang, another person, to lay another person on the tracks and force them to kill themselves. But the reason why they needed these buffers to cover their identity was because these were the policemen. These were the judges. These were the politicians. So they couldn't actually go out into the real world, into the real society, and show their face in doing their Klan activity, because then they wouldn't even be able to operate in society. This is still happening today. Another example, like if we look at the Islamic extremists, things of that nature, most of them covered themselves in garb. They garbed their whole heads around with these, with these scarves, these very elaborate scarves. And so these very elaborate scarves, though, it goes back into their theology. They operate from a very dualistic theology. They operate from the same Old Testament biblical, perspective, or the Old Testament Hebrew perspective of the God Yahweh, which is a God of fire. Now I'm gonna get to the fire too, which is a God of fire. And so because they're using this friction energy, a fire god energy, to fuel their perception when they operate from that paradigm of thought, they cover their own heads, because it goes back to their belief that you're supposed to cover your head for purity, so that the angels will not come down and sleep with the men. The gods sleep with the women. The gods came down and slept with the women and created the Nephilim. Now, if we look again into the whole, alien DNA aspect of that whole thing, we found out that, the whole aspect with like Yahweh, that particular fire deity was, again, some type of interdimensional, hyperdimensional contact with an alien life form that communicated with people and then affected people's behavior. And so these people are actually still using this same old dualistic perception, the same dualistic fire energy, contacting one aspect of fire, not even the whole aspect of the fire chain that fuels perception. They're only contacting one arm of it via Yahweh. And from that one perspective, they're manifesting certain myths that, again, are affecting their psyche. So they believe they need to be covered because they don't want some higher deity to come down and influence them, when that's in fact what's actually happening, which is why they're covered, because they cannot show their true face, because the face of the fire deity is actually showing its own face, which had to cover itself. Because if we go back to the Old Testament, the God Yahweh would not show his face to Moses. I don't know if we go back to the particular scripture where Moses was in the mountain and he said, "Show your face to me." And he said, "I will not show you my face. I will show you my hinder parts. Wedge yourself into this phase of the mountain and I will pass by you." And he showed him his ass. He literally showed him his ass and not his face. Like, that's the type of deity that people are working with when they evoke, the Yahweh spirit. And like, in a very logical reason, you cannot, when you talk about dualistic energies, when we operate from a sense of dualism. We're operating from a sense of division. And the sense of division is actually destruction. And destruction is actually a malevolent force, or quote unquote evil, for lack of a better term. It's a destructive force. But again, the whole destructive force is part of necessary in the cycle of destruction and rebuilding. But that source of energy, if one is completely bound by that energy, or like I say, the deity that is that energy, it cannot even show its face, because it said, if I show you my face, it will kill you. And literally speaking, it wouldn't show its face because it would scare him to death. And the reason why it would scare him to death is because that's how grotesque it is. It's literally that ugly, that divisive, that divided, penetrating into that level of darkness, where things literally look more grotesque. Like, it's a logical analysis of things. If you go deeper into the ocean creatures look a lot more scary. They have, the fish with the giant teeth, and like the light bulb that is literally extending outside of his head, and fueling the light around it, looking like some type of alien life form. There's the giant eels down at the bottom of the ocean, down in the depths of the ocean. These are very grotesque looking creatures because they live down in the depths of darkness. So when we talk about darkness or divided energies, and we're invoking deities, these deities are the full embodiment of that. So they are grotesque energies that cannot even be beheld, because it will literally make your soul jump out of your body, and send you back on the cycle again. And so we have people operating with certain paradigms of thought that they don't even realize what they're doing. But because they operate from a perception-oriented way of looking at life, they don't see that all is self, that everything is connected, everything is all life. We're all one big bundle of energy colliding with one another, destroying and rebuilding each other as we all return to source. When we use these false buffers of division, we deny ourselves the full aspect of life. We deny ourselves the full, eternal qualities of whatever God we may think that we're serving. We deny ourselves the full power and ability to manifest whatever it is in our lives. And so we have to get beyond, these social constructs where we believe that we need a buffer to let ourselves finally be who we are. Another example is like alcohol, for example. People they say, once you get drunk, you finally say what you really feel. Or say you may get high on the drug, marijuana, cocaine, things of that nature. You finally do what you quote unquote really want to do. And so again, if you are a type of person who finally feels yourself freed to be who you really are when you are partaking of some type of intoxicant, you are actually telling your subconscious that your normal state of being, your normal poised state of being, is actually not good enough. You're complying in a sense of psychological slavery. You keeping yourself bound and only allowing yourself to be free when you insert a buffer to your identity. And so we have to embrace freedom. We have to own who and what we are, and live and be that completely, so that energy, when we operate with that level of energy, we will transmit that to other people. And that's part of the reason why the world is kind of going the way it is, because none of us are being true to who we really are. None of us are really owning our identities. So we're walking around with this shelled version of ourselves, and we're just transmitting that energy to everyone we meet. We may have certain dreams and aspirations, but because we have shelled ourselves into thinking that these are crazy ideas that don't work, we shell off a whole section of energy. We shell off a whole refraction of light. We shell off a whole chakra. We shell off a whole aspect of ourselves that can be part of that generative force that propels us to go get whatever we need to go get out of this particular life. And so again, and it breaks back down to the science of the spirit. And I'll close on this part. We talk about fire again. I said the dualistic planes, black and white energy, just for basic terms, they collide with one another and they create the spark of life. The spark of life in this particular realm where we are is broken into 5 essential parts. Fire. What's that? Earth, wind, water, fire itself, and then ether. And so these particular 5 different things actually create the star. When you look up a 5-pointed star, that is the symbol of reality in and of itself, a star. And it's a blazing star, a star blazing in the night. You look in the night sky and you see stars illuminating the night. When you look at the sun, for whatever reason, many of us are taught that the sun is actually something different. The sun is just a star in the sky like every other star. We're just the ones closest. We're in a solar system that's closely surrounded around that star. And so when we analyze what the sun is, then we see that the sun is a dualistic force in and of itself. The sun keeps this regenerative principle where it's lighting everything, providing heat, providing life, because it is colliding positive and negative energies that is generating this hyper hot plasma that, again, once it's cooled down, it transmits light rays directly to the earth, which generates our existence. And so the same plasma or light rays are the intelligences that we can harness. And so when we, again, shut ourselves off, we cut off one of the 5 elements of light that are generating this planet Earth. So, we shut ourselves off by saying, oh, I can only be free using alcohol. Whoop, you've cut off your Earth element. So now you're only operating on 4 rungs of the light, or you say, oh, I can't be my true self. I got to make a false identity so I can finally, say something crazy about another race of people via the internet. Whoop, oh, you've cut off your air. So now you're operating on 5 parts of the light. Are you saying, I know I'm not a God. I need Jesus to come and save me. Whoop, you've cut off your fire. And so now you believe a fire deity is actually going to come save you when you actually are the fire. So it's these sorts of things that we keep using as buffers that cut off our whole existence, or cut off segments of our whole existence that we are supposed to be operating out of. And so again, it breaks down into the numerology, because I'll break it down with the numerology to close, because we got 5, which is the 5 elements of this manifestation, but it breaks into 7, or completes with 7. And 7 is the number of completion. It's in most of the books, including the Bible. But we break down into 7. So we've got the 5, which are the 5 elements, and there are the 2 poles, which are the black and white, which are the dualistic forces. And so the dualistic forces collide, create the spark, which expands into the 5 elements, and then we have the 7 completions, which is, again, our fueled existence. And so when we operate, again, from a sense of dualism, meaning we're either going to be light side or dark side, instead of us operating from a complete existence of 7, we only operate from 6. And so as opposed to operating on a full spectrum where we understand darkness and light, good and bad, good and evil, realizing that it's all one, we will not be what is called an adept, or we will not be what is called an adult. And when we don't operate on that, we form ourselves into either our religion, which is a Saturnalian concept of control, or we opt out of the whole power construct that we're in altogether and claim some form of agnosticism or some form of atheism where we deny the light. And so we have to actually go through this life not denying who and what we really are. And then we must begin to complete the cycle. And then we complete the cycle by owning who we really are and be able to speak and do the work that we're actually supposed to do. And so when we operate off of our full existence of 5, with not operating from dualism, understanding both energies, we create 7. And then once we create 7 and master our language by owning who and what we are and speaking that into our existence, we will speak and then do the work. And when we speak, SPEAK, which is 5, and then our speech patterns via our throat chakra will propel our arms to do the work, WORK, we will get to 9. And 9 is actually expansion. And so we could actually go through full expansion, full balanced expansion, where when we fully own our existence, we speak the words of our life and then let the words influence our behavior holistically, we will do a complete expansion where we take into full account of our identity and we will have a well-rounded life. But if we do it from some form of division, well, if we do it in some form of self-denial, or if we do it in some form of psychological slavery, we will expand, yes, but we will expand in an imbalanced state where a whole segment of the sphere will be off, and now we're expanding on a wobble, and our life will be imbalanced in some form or fashion. So we must actually go back to ourselves, look back into ourselves, and ask ourselves, where are we denying ourselves? What are we really in denial of? If we know that there's something that we want to get out of life, we just can't get the gears churning, we need to look inside of ourselves and say, well, what am I denying? What element or myth am I using that deconstructs my reality? What that deconstructs, the element of 5 that I'm denying myself. What aspect, do I not see? What form of knowledge am I not adhering to? Just really go back in our meditation and in our self-reflection, in our journals, to really see where is our psyche missing the point? Where is it not clicking? and when we finally do the work internally to really see what's going on in our lives, we will get the information that we need to reinsert whatever was missing, and then we can begin the process of healing our consciousness. And then as we heal, we'll be able to work. And as we work and transmit that energy, we will actually heal others. And so this is a part of the healing work that I am doing here. We meditate, and I hope that I've passed on some information for you that can help heal other people as well. So own who you are, be unafraid to do it, and do it in peace and intolerance of everybody else's view, and the world will view you in a peace and tolerant way too. I am Son of Pharaoh. This is We Meditate. Peace.